any of those jump out at either one of y'all that you wanna tackle, man?
White privilege. That's white privilege.
Go for it.
I do believe there's a degree of white privilege.
Okay.
And I think it's always been there. I think it's going to always be there. And I mean, it's going to sound cliche, but I have a lot of white friends. I have a lot of black friends in the whole nine. And I do tease them about their white privilege. And you kind of, because it's fun. But I do believe in it. But I think it's something that even they can't control. That's due to word privilege.
Right.
They don't see it due to word privilege. I had a neighbor ask me. He had just moved into my neighborhood, and I remember I've been there first. He moved into my neighborhood, and he came over to meet me. He introduced himself, and his second question to me was, "What do I do for a living?" And you see your reaction. I told my white counterparts that, and they were confused on why that's an issue. I said, well, you just don't ask that question to a black man what he does for a living. Just kind of, we can take it as offensive, because what are you saying? I don't belong here? That's how we take it.
That's
exactly what are you saying? I don't belong here?
Okay, well then, I'm just gonna throw it out here. I'm confused. When you asked that and you started saying most of my white friends would be confused, I'm like, yeah, like what's wrong with that? But I can tell you, I mean, from my view, that's a very common question.
I know, but I wouldn't dare ask him. And you see how he's reacting when I said it. Like I told all the black friend, they're like, he said what to you? Yeah. I'm like, yeah, he asked me what I do for a living.
Okay, then fill me in and educate me.
Because the automatic assumption when someone says that, they automatically assume, okay, well, what do you do for a living? Mm-hmm. Well, that person must be a retired NBA player.
He said dope.
Yeah, right.
Yep. I'm serious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's how we take it. Like, why are you asking me that question? Wow. I don't belong over here with you on the side of you in your neighborhood. Why does it matter?
How'd you make it this far? How'd you get in that house?
Yeah, how you get
that's basically the question.
That's the question.
How did you get in there?
How you get in the house?
Okay, well, I'm really blown away here. I really am. And
See, white privilege.
Oh man, get that off. I don't know white privilege on me.
Yeah, I mean.
So I'm just blown away with that question being offensive, because that is it is a very common question. I know, without an assumption. Like for me.
The second question you asked me though, the second.
Yeah, I mean, I meet people. I meet people all the time. Yeah. You know that. Yeah. I have to deal with all kinds of people, and people are my life, right? And that is a very nonchalant. I mean, what do you do for a living?
Wow,
it really is.
And it's and like I said before, it's the environment that you grew up in. Yeah. It was that question was asked like a norm. And it was more just to see, hey, what you doing? And that's how it is. But in other atmospheres, in other ecosystems, other people say it as, okay, what are you doing here? Why are you here?
Wow. I would never come to the conclusion that question leads to that assumption.
Oh, that's a heavy question. That's a loaded question.
So I mean, for me, it's truly one of interest. I know. Yeah. My family, I know, I don't think my brother or even my dad, who's 68 or 9 right now. Anyway, I don't see that. But I hear you. I mean, both of y'all lit it up. So I'm like, okay, man, write that down. Do not ask a black person what they do for a living. So I guess you wouldn't say, how do you get your money either? Right? I mean, like, I'm really blown away here. So I get it. And I want to throw that around in my head. But
the difference is a person like me, I don't lash out and I don't put people in their place. Sometimes my wife gets on to me because she thinks I should do it more often. I don't, because I'm like, what's the end game? Exactly. What's the end game? What am I going to gain by? Hey, man, you shouldn't have me that question, man. You still matter why I'm here. Why? What am I going to solve? But just tell me what I do and move on.
What if it's an assumption? What if there's a way to ask your neighbor, you never come off very
assertive and aggressive.
well, not assertive because he's pretty strong in your conversation. He'll put the point out. He's just not all flip the he doesn't I don't know the right word. But why couldn't you say, hey man, yeah, good to meet you, man. I work for a flooring company. Hey, curious, why would you ask me that? I'm just curious. Like, I believe that something like that can help at least bring that conversation up.
Bring it out there, yeah.
Because if what you're saying is true, then my automatic thought is that he's ignorant. He's ignorance is not knowing. Ignorance is not
Right.
having knowledge. I'm ignorant to this as of 5 minutes ago.
No, but I think Chris Cornelius thinks that he genuinely wants to know what I do for a living. Like it's nothing,
Right.
and it's nothing more to that, right? You think he just wants to know what I do for a living, and you may be true.
that's naive
you
on
may
my
be
end.
right.
Yeah.
But it doesn't feel right hearing that question, especially that fast. You know, we had known each other for a few days. You know, I've been come by the house, and then he had that question. Maybe I would have took it a little better, but in a matter of the first 5 minutes,
I would have asked you right away, man.
really,
Yeah.
in the first 5 minutes of meeting me,
I would have asked you, how does your name Trouble?
I'm okay with
And-
that.
You gotta be, man. I mean, come on, it's
But-
like it's crazy that your name is literally Trouble. I would ask you, how in the world did you get your name? Really, man, what do you do for like? It would be a non-invasive, it's just how do we
It's how you present it. Is two. You said you started off with his name, and it led into the question of how, like, where do you work? Because with a name like that, you either got to be a UFC fighter or something.
Yeah.
So
It led into it, yeah.
That's a segue. But whenever you hear, hey, what's your name? What do you do for a living? Like that right there is like, okay, why?
I get it. I get it, and there's some things that are rolling in my head. So if y'all don't know, well, y'all two know, but anybody watching, I am in an interracial relationship. My wife, she is Hispanic, and we've had some issues in the past with, or really she has with other, white people. And there are little things like that I get it. I mean, there's things like that I didn't pick up on until she would bring some of that to light,
It's a cultural thing. I mean, we raised, you don't ask a woman her age. You don't ask a woman if she's pregnant. You don't ask a black man what we do for a living. It's like one of those things. It's just I can get on the list. It's a cultural thing. I mean, you just
man.
I'm telling you, man. It's a whole list. I don't want to get into it right now, but it's a whole list.
Well, you need to give me the list.
Also, I can help you out.
I think everyone needs a list.
it's a
Everyone
whole
needs
list,
to listen.
man.
I need
Go ahead,
some list,
laminate
man.
it.
But
Yeah. There's something you just don't ask people. You don't
Okay.
ask them. You just don't.
I mean, I'm trying to jump off.
Because there's
into-
no way in the world I would have ever asked him that question. There's nothing that would have made me ask him that question.
Okay.
I would have been lost forever.
Yeah, either that or I would have done some, recon myself. Like, hey, he's driving a work truck there. He might be. Yeah.
If it doesn't endanger my family, or I thought it was endangering my family, I wouldn't care. Wouldn't have to care in the world what he did.
Or if
for
he
them.
didn't bring it up in a conversation
Yep.
himself, that's.
Man, okay. Well, this is good. See, this is the kind of stuff that need to happen.
But to me, that feeds into the whole quote white privilege. I think it's a mindset, and I don't think it has a negative connotation. White privilege. But I don't think it is. I think, again, I hope I don't offend you. I don't think white people know. Like I don't think he meant harm by that. I really don't think he meant harm by that. I think a lot of white privilege is just the way their culture, the way they think.
Right.
I don't think there's nothing negative about it. It's just way, like you said, you to this moment, you're like, I thought I was. What's wrong with that question? You don't mean no harm by it. You thought everything is okay. Yeah. I don't think white privilege is negative. I don't think it's okay. I'm gonna go out here and use my white privilege to. I don't think
Right.
so. Yeah.
It's more of you have the privilege to do things that I don't. You have because I know I've been in a car with plenty of friends that were white, plenty of friends that were Hispanic, and they would do things that I wouldn't do if once they got pulled over by a cop. I mean, yelling,
berating.
Yeah. No. And that's one of the things you're taught as a black person, not to basically mind your P's and Q's and dot your I's and T's, because everyone's watching you.
Yeah.
You are there from the moment you're born.
I understand that, and to answer his point is, for the longest time when I was hearing white privilege, I did get upset or bothered, or like, man, and here's the reason. I don't want to throw anybody under the bus, but one of my daughters is really lit up with all this conversation right now. She's on fire. She's doing all kind of research and stuff, and she was making we have a very good communication between us, and we were talking one day, kind of hard conversation, and she began to say about my white privilege and because I was raised this way, and I said, well, what are you talking about? I raised you. What you? And no, I don't think we're perfect, but we got to talking, and she mentioned this stuff, and I said, baby, look. And she referenced us moving out of the neighborhood we were in. When I talk about North Side, we were living on the north side of Houston, right by the Thea Pancha flea market, airline, and Mitchell. And it's just really bad over there, you know. It is. I grew up there, but she was talking about that, and I said, baby, hold on. We didn't move out of there because we're white, or because I'm white and you're half. We moved out of there because Dad was going to probably go to jail for. I mean, you know, my wife. Look, over there, it is a predominantly Mexican culture. It's not Hispanic. It's there. They are, people from Mexico that are living there, and here we go. This is it's a different culture. I grew up around that culture. I know a lot about. I speak fluent Spanish. I'm in that culture. My wife is Hispanic, but man, their outlook in the neighborhood where we were in the community we lived, the outlook on women and young girls. My wife would go to the store with our 3 young daughters who were, coming into their early teens to 10 years old, that kind of window, and they were developing, and these men, grown men, would stare at my daughters like a piece of meat. And this was all the time. They couldn't even stop at the stoplight without that going. Now, do I think that's a Mexican thing? No, not at all. That's a sin issue. That's a lust issue. I get that. It's just that in some areas, some cultures, some places, some communities, those things are more prevalent than others. There's more. They're more. I don't know. Crass about it, I guess would be. They're more apt to portray that, and that's the area we lived in. So we didn't move out because we had white privilege. We moved out because
you didn't want to catch a case.
There you go.
I mean,
exactly, man.
I would feel the same way.
And so, does that mean that my kids didn't grow up around, the drinking and the drugs and people fighting in the street and all? Yeah, no, they didn't grow up around that. We wanted to keep them from that because that's the way that Raquel and I grew up, in that kind of stuff, and we didn't want that for our kids. Now, to me, I had to explain it. That's not white privilege to me. That's just smart.
Yeah.
I mean, that's, and so I understand white privilege stuff when it comes to like the issue you talked about, the skin color thing with someone judging or something like that, or being pulled over. I understand that there's something there.
You have a longer leash, I guess is.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you have a longer leash, as they say.
Look, I'm not successful as a business owner because of, in my opinion, because of white privilege. I did go to a bank a few years ago to buy our current building that we're in. But that was after 17 years of being in business. You know what I mean? It wasn't, we started out with nothing. I mean, I left an amazing job with good money, and I started scraping floors for $50 a day to learn how to be a chalan, an ayudante, a helper.
Yeah.
And we continued to grow the business, and here we are 21 years later, and we're there, and it's been all this steady process of build and grow for first 15, 16 years. We didn't have anything in the business. And so there's nothing in there that I believe that it happened because
And because I know you, I would agree with you on that.
Oh, yeah.
I would. I would agree with you on that one. Yes.
But someone else, what if
yeah.
what if someone that's black that watches this and Google's Cornelius Contracting and, oh, wow, they, you know what I mean? Would they think, oh, well, he's there because white privilege? Because that's some of the stuff that I've heard, and maybe I'm just assuming, and I'm wrong if I'm assuming, but if that comes up, you know what I mean? That's my issue with white privilege.